Shadows of Sacrifice. Cassandra Palmer stood in the empty hallway of what was once her home, fingers tracing the outline of picture hooks on the wall. The photographs that had hung there, documenting 8 years of marriage, were gone now, packed, away in boxes or claimed by Ethan in the hasty division of their life together. 3 months had passed since her husband had sat her down at their kitchen table and explained, with clinical precision, why their marriage no longer fit into his 5-year plan. "I need someone who understands the world I'm moving in now, Cass," Ethan had said, his voice steady as if delivering a prognosis to a patient. "Someone who complements the position I've earned." The irony wasn't lost on her. For 6 years, she had worked double shifts at the architectural firm to support them, while Ethan completed medical school and his residency. She had postponed her own dreams of restoration architecture, taken the safe corporate job, organized the dinner parties with his colleagues, and edited every word of his research papers, all while he became the rising star of cardiovascular surgery at Westlake Memorial. The doorbell rang, jolting Cassandra from her memories. Her friend Olivia stood on the porch, rental truck keys dangling from her fingers. "Ready for the final sweep?" Olivia asked, her eyes softening as she took in Cassandra's expression. "As ready as I'll ever be," Cassandra replied, forcing a smile. "Just making sure I didn't leave anything behind." "Except your youth and your best years," Olivia muttered, following her inside. Cassandra winced. "That's not fair. We built something together. I don't regret supporting him." "Well, you should regret something, because while you were working yourself to exhaustion, he was building a life that had an exit strategy with your replacement already lined up." Cassandra knew Olivia was right. Rebecca Winters, the hospital's new head of donor relations, had been more than a colleague to Ethan long before he asked for the divorce. She had seen the signs, the late meetings, the weekend conferences, the sudden interest in his appearance, but had trusted him when he dismissed her concerns. "The movers got everything else?" Olivia asked, changing the subject as she glanced around the emptied living room. "Yes, it's all headed to the apartment downtown." Cassandra had found a small but charming place in the city's historic district, not far from the firm where she still worked. "I start my new position next week." "The preservation division? The one you always wanted?" Cassandra nodded. "I figured it was time to stop putting my passions on hold." As they did one final walkthrough, Cassandra paused in Ethan's former study. On the built-in bookshelf, a single volume remained, a leather-bound collection of architectural sketches she had given him their first Christmas together. He had called it impractical, but kept it because she insisted it was beautiful. He had left it behind, like her. Later, as they drove away from the suburban house with its manicured lawn and imported fixtures, Olivia glanced at her friend. "So, what's next for Cassandra Palmer?" "Honestly, I don't know." Cassandra watched the neighborhood recede in the side mirror. "For so long, everything was about building Ethan's future. I'm not sure I remember how to build my own." "Well, that's the thing about being an architect, isn't it?" Olivia's voice was gentle. "You know better than anyone that sometimes you have to clear the site before you can create something magnificent." As they merged onto the highway, Cassandra rolled down her window, letting the summer air rush in. For the first time in months, she felt something other than numbness or pain. It was small, fragile, but unmistakable, a flutter of possibility. "You know what the worst part is?" she said finally. "It's not that he left. It's that he made me believe I was nothing more than a stepping stone for him. That once he reached his destination, I became unnecessary." "Then show him, show everyone just how wrong he was," Olivia said fiercely. Cassandra looked out at the city skyline emerging on the horizon, its towers gleaming in the afternoon sun. She had helped shape that skyline, even if her name wasn't on the buildings. She knew how to create things that lasted. "I'm not interested in showing him anything," she said quietly. "But I am interested in remembering who I was before I became Mrs. Ethan Palmer." As the truck continued toward the city, Cassandra felt the weight of her wedding ring in her pocket, the last remnant of a life she was leaving behind. Tomorrow she would sell it and use the money to fund her first solo restoration project. It seemed fitting somehow, transforming something from her past into the foundation for her future. The shadows of what she had sacrificed were long, but as she watched them stretch behind her, Cassandra realized they couldn't follow her forever. Not if she stepped into the light. Threads of renewal. 6 months into her new life, Cassandra stood on the scaffolding of the Harrington Building, a forgotten Art Deco masterpiece that had languished in disrepair for decades. The October wind tugged at her hair as she carefully documented the condition of the original limestone carvings. Her promotion to the Preservation Division had come with her first major project, overseeing the restoration of this 1930s gem in the heart of downtown. "Ms. Palmer?" a voice called from below. "Mr. Blackwood has arrived for the site inspection." Cassandra checked her watch. Julian Blackwood, the developer who had purchased the building and commissioned its restoration, was precisely on time, something she appreciated after years of waiting for Ethan to show up for dinners and events. She descended the scaffolding, smoothing her practical work clothes and tucking her notebook under her arm. She had exchanged her suburban wardrobe of neutral-toned dresses for sturdy boots, tailored pants, and shirts that could withstand a day on a construction site. The transformation wasn't just external. With each passing week, she felt more like herself, the woman who had once dreamed of breathing life back into forgotten spaces. Julian Blackwood waited in what would eventually become the building's grand lobby. He was taller than she expected, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that assessed the space with genuine interest. Unlike most developers she'd worked with, who saw historic buildings merely as investment opportunities, Blackwood had a reputation for authentic preservation. "Mr. Blackwood?" She extended her hand. "Cassandra Palmer, thank you for making time to see the progress firsthand." His handshake was firm. "The Harrington is worth the trip. Your preliminary reports have been remarkably thorough." They began the tour, moving through the skeleton of what would soon become a mixed-use building with retail space, offices, and luxury apartments. Cassandra found herself relaxing as they discussed load-bearing walls and period-appropriate fixtures. Blackwood asked intelligent questions and actually listened to her answers. "These elevator doors," he said, running a hand over the tarnished brass panels etched with geometric patterns. "Can they be salvaged?" "Absolutely." Cassandra touched the intricate design. "They're one of the building's most distinctive features. We've located a metalworker in Philadelphia who specializes in Art Deco restoration." "Cost?" "Significant, but worth it. These tell the building's story." Blackwood studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Do it." "I didn't save this building to strip away its character." By the time they reached the rooftop, Cassandra had forgotten to be nervous. The view of the city stretched before them, a patchwork of architectural styles spanning nearly 2 centuries. "I grew up 3 blocks from here," Blackwood said unexpectedly, pointing to an area of modest brownstones. "Used to look up at this building and wonder what it was like inside. Seemed like something from another world." Cassandra smiled. "And now you own it." "Now I'm its caretaker," he corrected. "Buildings like this outlast us. Our job is to make sure they survive for the next generation." The sentiment resonated with her deeply. "That's exactly how I see preservation work." "Which is why I requested you for this project," he said. "Your portfolio showed a genuine respect for architectural integrity. That's rare." Cassandra blinked in surprise. "You specifically asked for me?" "Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Palmer. Your work on the Franklin Street Library restoration was impressive, particularly your solution for modernizing the climate control without compromising the original woodwork." She felt a flush of pride. Those innovations had been entirely her idea, implemented while she was still in the corporate division. She hadn't realized anyone had noticed. As they concluded the tour, Blackwood surprised her again. I'm hosting a dinner next week for the Historical Preservation Society. They're interested in the Harrington. Would you present our restoration plan? You understand the vision better than anyone. I'd be honored, Cassandra replied, trying to mask her excitement. The Preservation Society's endorsement would elevate the project's profile significantly. Excellent. My assistant will send details. He paused before adding, "It's refreshing to work with someone who sees beyond the surface, Ms. Palmer." After he left, Cassandra remained on the rooftop, watching the setting sun gild the city's edges. For years, she had lived in Ethan's shadow, her contributions minimized or overlooked. Here, in this forgotten building being carefully brought back to life, her expertise was not just recognized, it was valued. The dinner presentation was a success, with the Preservation Society offering their enthusiastic support. More importantly, it led to regular meetings with Blackwood, who sought her input on other potential restoration projects. Their professional relationship evolved naturally, built on mutual respect and shared passion for architectural history. 3. Weeks after the Harrington project began, Olivia joined Cassandra for lunch at a cafe near the construction site. "So," Olivia stirred her coffee with deliberate casualness. "Julian Blackwood." Cassandra rolled her eyes. "It's strictly professional. The man owns half the city's real estate portfolio and personally attends your weekly site meetings. That's not just professional, that's interest. He's interested in the building and in the woman bringing it back to life." Olivia leaned forward. "When was the last time someone saw you, really saw you, for your talent and intelligence?" The question lingered as Cassandra returned to the site that afternoon. As she reviewed the detailed drawings for the restored mezzanine, her phone buzzed with a text from her former neighbor. "Thought you should know. Ethan and Rebecca announced their engagement last night at the hospital fundraiser." "Sorry." Cassandra stared at the message, waiting for the pain to hit. Instead, she felt a strange lightness, as if the last thread tying her to her old life had finally been cut. That evening, as she worked late in the temporary site office, a knock on the door revealed Julian holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing one on her desk. "The lighting crew said you were still here." "Just finalizing the molding designs," she explained, gesturing to her sketches. He studied them appreciatively. "Beautiful work." "Thank you," she said, and realized she meant it not just for the coffee or the compliment, but for seeing value in what she created, in who she was becoming. The restoration, it seemed, wasn't limited to the building. Echoes of Humiliation, the Westlake Memorial Hospital. Annual charity gala was the social event of the season, drawing the city's elite to support the hospital's expansion. Cassandra hadn't planned to attend until Julian mentioned he was a major donor for the new cardiovascular wing, the project Ethan had been positioned to lead. "The hospital board specifically requested my presence," Julian explained as they walked through the nearly completed lobby of the Harrington building. "Apparently, they want to publicly thank the donors before construction begins next month." Cassandra hesitated, her fingers tracing the newly restored marble countertop. "I should probably mention that my ex-husband is the head of cardiovascular surgery there." Julian's expression remained neutral. "Would that make the evening uncomfortable for you?" "No," she said, surprising herself with the realization that it was true. "It's been almost a year. I've moved on." "Then perhaps you'd consider being my guest. These events are more tolerable with good company." The invitation was casual, presented without pressure, yet Cassandra found herself imagining walking into that room, a room where Ethan and his new fiancée would undoubtedly be holding court. 6 months ago, the thought would have filled her with dread. Now, she felt ready to close that chapter completely. "I'd like that," she said simply. The night of the gala arrived, unseasonably warm for April. Cassandra chose a deep emerald gown that complemented her auburn hair, which she'd finally grown out from the practical bob she'd maintained during her marriage. The woman in the mirror looked confident, elegant, a far cry from the broken person who had emptied out her suburban home last summer. Julian picked her up in his understated luxury car, his appreciation evident in his eyes. "You look magnificent." "Cassandra." "The dress is new," she admitted. "I haven't had occasion for formal wear since leaving a man who clearly didn't deserve you," Julian finished, opening the car door. His loss, as they say. The hospital had transformed its main atrium into a glittering venue, with champagne flowing and a string quartet playing softly in the background. As they entered, Cassandra felt a flutter of anxiety, but Julian's steady presence beside her provided an unexpected anchor. "Julian Blackwood." A hospital board member approached immediately. "We're honored you could join us. The architectural plans for the new wing are on display in the East Gallery." "I'll be sure to view them," Julian replied graciously. "May I introduce Cassandra Palmer? She's the preservation architect overseeing the Harrington restoration." The board member's face lit up. "The Harrington. What a marvelous project. We've all been watching its transformation." As the evening progressed, Cassandra found herself engaged in genuine conversations about her work, with several guests expressing interest in touring the building once it was completed. For the first time in years, she wasn't being introduced as Ethan's wife or politely acknowledged before conversations turned elsewhere. She was halfway through describing the challenges of restoring the Harrington's mosaic floor to an interested couple when she felt the atmosphere shift. Looking up, she saw Ethan and Rebecca making their entrance, moving through the crowd with practiced smiles. Rebecca's diamond engagement ring caught the light, deliberately visible as she placed her hand on Ethan's arm. Cassandra excused herself to get a fresh drink, needing a moment to steady her nerves. At the bar, she overheard familiar voices from just around the corner. "Isn't that your ex-wife?" A woman's voice. Dr. Patterson from neurology, Cassandra recognized. "Yes." Ethan's dismissive tone carried clearly. "Apparently she's working on some old building downtown. She looks different," Dr. Patterson observed. "Cass always did clean up nicely for these events," Ethan replied with casual cruelty. "Though she never quite fit in with our circle. Too ordinary, too focused on old things rather than innovation. Rebecca understands the importance of perception in our position." "And speaking of perception," Rebecca's voice now, honeyed but sharp, "who is she here with?" "Surely not Julian Blackwood," a male voice laughed. "Probably just professional. She's likely designing something for him. Always was good at following directions, our Cassandra." "Well," Ethan's voice dropped, though not enough. "She's welcome to the crumbs from the tables of the successful. God knows she spent enough years living off mine." Laughter followed, cutting, dismissive laughter that echoed against the marble floors. Cassandra stood frozen, the familiar feeling of invisibility washing over her. For a moment, she was transported back to countless hospital functions where she had been tolerated rather than welcomed, her contributions to Ethan's success conveniently forgotten. "Cassandra." Julian's voice broke through her paralysis. He stood beside her, concern evident in his expression. "Is everything all right?" She forced a smile. "Fine. Just getting another drink." "I heard." His voice was quiet but firm. "They're not worth your distress." Heat rushed to her face. "You weren't supposed to hear that. No one was. And yet they spoke loudly enough to ensure someone would." Julian's eyes hardened momentarily. "People who diminish others rarely understand true value." Before she could respond, one of the hospital administrators clinked a glass for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for some exciting announcements about our new cardiovascular wing." The crowd gathered in the center of the atrium. Cassandra reluctantly followed Julian, finding themselves positioned directly across from Ethan and Rebecca in the circular arrangement of guests. Ethan's eyes widened slightly when he noticed her, then narrowed when he registered Julian standing beside her. Thanks to our generous donors, construction begins next month on what will be the most advanced cardiovascular center in the region, the administrator announced. We're particularly grateful to our lead donor, Mr. Julian Blackwood, whose contribution has made this dream possible. A spotlight found Julian, who nodded modestly as applause filled the room. Ethan's expression froze, his gaze darting between Julian and Cassandra with growing confusion. And now, the administrator continued, Dr. Ethan Palmer will say a few words about the medical innovations planned for the new wing. As Ethan moved to the center of the circle, he visibly struggled to regain his composure. His prepared remarks seemed mechanical, his usual charisma dimmed by the unexpected realization that the man funding his career-making project was standing beside his discarded wife. When he finished speaking, Julian approached him with professional courtesy. Impressive plans, Dr. Palmer. I look forward to seeing your team's work come to fruition. Mr. Blackwood, Ethan managed, his voice strained. I didn't realize you were personally attending tonight, or that you knew Cassandra. Quite. Well, actually, Julian replied smoothly. Her brilliant work on the Harrington restoration caught my attention months ago. She's revolutionizing how we approach historic preservation in this city. Rebecca appeared at Ethan's side, her smile tight. How fascinating. Ethan always said Cassandra had potential. She has far more than potential, Julian corrected gently. She has exceptional talent and vision. In fact, we're collaborating on several major projects that will transform the downtown district. As Julian continued describing Cassandra's contributions in glowing terms, she watched the realization dawn on Ethan's face. The woman he had dismissed as ordinary was now moving in circles that even he couldn't access easily, valued for precisely the qualities he had belittled. Later, as they prepared to leave, Julian placed a gentle hand on the small of her back. Would you like to see something before we go? He led her to the East Gallery, where the architectural plans for the new wing were displayed. There, on the dedication plaque mock-up, was her name listed as the preservation consultant for integrating the new construction with the hospital's historic main building. I took the liberty of recommending you to the board last month, Julian explained. They were impressed with your portfolio. Cassandra stared at her name, emotion tightening her throat. You didn't tell me. I wanted it to be your choice, without any pressure. The contract is yours if you want it. As they left the gala, Cassandra caught Ethan watching them from across the room, his expression a complex mixture of shock, regret, and dawning comprehension. For the first time, he was seeing her, truly seeing her, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was that others had seen her worth long before this moment, most importantly, she herself. Moments of recognition. The summer sun beat down on the gathering crowd outside Westlake Memorial Hospital. In 2 hours, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new cardiovascular wing would begin, bringing together donors, medical staff, and the media. Cassandra stood in the shade of a nearby tree, reviewing her talking points for the brief presentation she would give about the architectural integration of the new wing with the historic main building. Over the past 3 months, she had worked closely with the hospital's construction team, ensuring that modern medical necessities harmonized with the original structure's character. It had been a challenging project, made more complex by Ethan's barely concealed resentment during planning meetings, but the results were undeniably impressive. Nervous? Julian appeared beside her, immaculate in a light gray suit despite the heat. A little, she admitted. It's one thing to present to fellow architects or preservation enthusiasts, quite another to address donors and the board of directors. The same people who unanimously approved your designs, Julian reminded her. Besides, After your presentation at the Historical Society's conference last month, this should be effortless. Cassandra smiled, remembering the standing ovation she'd received for her keynote address on urban restoration economics. The Harrington building, now in its final stages of completion, had become a case study in successful historic preservation, featured in several architectural journals. Her career had blossomed beyond anything she could have imagined a year ago. "You're right," she said, tucking away her notes. "I know this material inside and out. And afterward, I have something to show you at the Harrington," Julian added. The craftsman finished the lobby ceiling medallion yesterday. Their relationship had evolved naturally over the months, professional admiration gradually deepening into something more personal. Julian had never rushed her, seeming to understand intuitively that she needed to rediscover herself before sharing her life with someone else. His patience, his genuine interest in her thoughts and dreams, had been a revelation after years with Ethan. As they walked toward the hospital entrance, Cassandra spotted a familiar figure speaking animatedly to a group of board members. Ethan looked thinner than she remembered, the confident set of his shoulders slightly diminished. Beside him stood Rebecca, her smile fixed and professional as she gripped his arm with visible tension. Rumors had circulated through Cassandra's former social circle that their engagement was showing signs of strain. Rebecca had apparently expected to be named the hospital's director of development after their marriage, only to be passed over for an external candidate with more experience. The setback had reportedly triggered arguments about their future, with Rebecca pressing for a move to a more prestigious hospital on the East Coast. Cassandra felt no satisfaction in their troubles. Whatever pain Ethan had caused her had long since transformed into something more valuable, the catalyst for reclaiming her own path. "Cassandra!" Hospital Administrator Thomas Whitfield approached, hand extended. "The place looks magnificent. Your design for the atrium skylight has everyone talking. The natural light makes such a difference for patients and staff," she replied. "Studies show healing rates improve with access to daylight." "Exactly why the board was unanimous in implementing your recommendations," Whitfield nodded. "Even with the additional cost." From the corner of her eye, Cassandra saw Ethan stiffen, clearly overhearing the exchange. He had fought against the skylight modification, arguing that the funds would be better spent on additional equipment. In the end, Julian's support for the patient-centered design had swayed the board. As more guests arrived, Cassandra found herself surrounded by people genuinely interested in her work. A reporter from the Architectural Quarterly asked detailed questions about her preservation philosophy. The hospital's chief of oncology thanked her for designing staff respite areas on each floor. Even board members who had once barely acknowledged her at Ethan's side now sought her professional opinion. The ceremony began promptly at noon, with speeches from the hospital director, major donors, and the chief of cardiovascular surgery, Ethan. He spoke confidently about the medical advances the new wing would facilitate, but Cassandra noticed the slight tremor in his hands, the way his gaze skipped over her in the front row. When it was her turn to speak, Cassandra approached the podium with newfound assurance. She explained how the new wing honored the hospital's architectural heritage while embracing cutting-edge medical technology. The crowd responded warmly, particularly to her description of how historical elements had been preserved and incorporated into the modern design. "The past and future need not be adversaries," she concluded. "In this building, they stand as partners in the mission of healing." After the applause died down, the ribbon was cut, and the crowd began moving into the new wing for tours. Julian caught up with her in the magnificent atrium she had designed, where light streamed through the geometric skylight, casting prismatic patterns across the terrazzo floor. "Beautifully said," he murmured, his hand finding hers briefly. "You've created something extraordinary here." "We all did," she corrected. "It was a team effort." "Ms. Palmer." Ethan's voice came from behind them, formal and strained. The board members are asking for you. They have questions about the design elements. Cassandra turned, meeting his gaze directly. Of course, I'd be happy to address their questions. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, recognition, perhaps, of how completely their positions had reversed. Once, she had stood in his shadow at hospital functions. Now, he was facilitating her professional connections. Your work is... He hesitated, swallowing visibly. The design is exceptional. Everyone is impressed. Thank you, Ethan, she replied, simply. As she moved to join the waiting board members, Julian beside her, she heard Rebecca's tense whisper to Ethan. Did you know she's been offered the renovation contract for the Sinclair Museum? That's a 7-figure project. The tours continued for over an hour, with Cassandra guiding groups through the architectural highlights of the new wing. When she finally had a moment alone, she found herself in the transitional corridor connecting the historic building to the new construction, the space where she had worked hardest to create a seamless flow between past and present. It really is remarkable. The voice belonged to Dr. Patterson, who had once laughed at Ethan's cruel dismissal of her at the gala. I owe you an apology, Cassandra. For what? Cassandra asked, though she knew perfectly well. For underestimating you, for assuming... The neurologist had the grace to look ashamed. Well, for making assumptions about your capabilities based on nothing substantial. Thank you for saying that, Cassandra replied, surprising herself with how little the acknowledgement meant now. The validation she had once craved from Ethan's colleagues seemed trivial compared to the professional respect she had earned on her own terms. Later, as the event wound down, Cassandra found Julian waiting for her near the hospital entrance. Ready to see the Harrington ceiling? Absolutely, she smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. As they prepared to leave, she noticed Ethan watching them from across the lobby, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Cassandra saw what might have been regret flash across his features. But then Julian's hand settled gently on her back, and she turned toward the future she had built for herself. Outside, the summer afternoon had mellowed into golden light. The Harrington building was only a short drive away, its restored facade now a crown jewel in the city's architectural landscape. As Julian's car pulled away from the hospital, Cassandra glanced back once at the new wing rising sleek and modern. Beside the historic structure, different in form but unified in purpose. You know what I realized today? She said as they drove through the city. This wasn't about proving anything to Ethan or his colleagues. It was about remembering who I always was, beneath the roles I thought I needed to play. Julian smiled, his eyes briefly meeting hers. The best recognition always comes from within, doesn't it? As the Harrington building came into view, its Art Deco details gleaming in the afternoon sun, Cassandra felt a profound sense of homecoming. Not to a place, but to herself, to the woman who had always been there, waiting to be rediscovered. Horizons of redemption. Autumn painted the city in amber and crimson as Cassandra stood at the podium in the Harrington building's grand ballroom. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the sunset gilding the downtown skyline. Before her, 300 guests had gathered for the building's official reopening gala. Architects, preservationists, city officials, and prominent citizens celebrating the renaissance of a forgotten landmark. When we began this journey 18 months ago, Cassandra addressed the attentive crowd, the Harrington was considered beyond salvation. Today, it stands as testament to what we can achieve when we honor our architectural heritage while embracing the future. The applause was warm and genuine. As lead architect on the restoration, this night represented the culmination of her professional rebirth. The Harrington project had led to 3 more major commissions, including the prestigious Sinclair Museum renovation. Her preservation philosophy, Blending historical integrity with modern functionality had become her signature in the architectural community. After her speech, Cassandra mingled with guests touring the building's meticulously restored spaces. The Art Deco details, the brass elevator doors, the intricate ceiling medallions, the marble mosaics, had been brought back to their original splendor. Yet the building now housed cutting-edge technology and sustainable systems that would carry it through another century. The perfect balance of preservation and progress, remarked the city's mayor, admiring the restored lobby. You've given us back a piece of our history, Ms. Palmer. That was always the goal, Cassandra replied, to save what matters while allowing the building to evolve. As the evening continued, she found herself approached by a familiar figure, Dr. Laura Winters, the new chief of oncology at Westlake Memorial. They had worked together during the hospital wing project, forming a mutual respect that had evolved into friendship. Magnificent achievement, Laura said, gesturing to the space around them. Though I'm not surprised, the attention to detail you brought to our healing gardens at the hospital was extraordinary. How are the gardens working out? Cassandra asked. The therapeutic outdoor spaces had been her additional contribution to the hospital project, designed to give patients and families moments of peace amid medical challenges. Transformative. Laura's expression softened. I've seen patients find strength there that medication alone couldn't provide, which is actually why I wanted to speak with you tonight. The oncologist explained that the hospital board was considering a major renovation of the children's wing. We need someone who understands that healing environments are as important as medical technology. Your name is at the top of our list. Cassandra felt a surge of emotion. The opportunity to design spaces specifically for children facing serious illness, to bring light and comfort into their challenging journeys, resonated deeply with her sense of purpose. I'd be honored to discuss it further, she said sincerely. As Laura moved away, Julian approached with 2 champagne flutes. Another commission? Your firm will need to expand at this rate. Cassandra smiled, accepting the glass. Actually, I've been thinking about that. About creating a specialized division focused exclusively on healing architecture, hospitals, recovery centers, therapeutic spaces, combining beauty and purpose. Julian nodded thoughtfully. It suits you. Their conversation was interrupted by the event coordinator who needed Julian's approval for the evening's final arrangements. Left momentarily alone, Cassandra wandered toward the terrace doors, seeking a quiet moment to absorb the evening's significance. The terrace overlooked the city park where she had spent countless lunch hours during the past year, sketching and reimagining her life. Now, from this vantage point, she could see both where she had been and the limitless horizon before her. Cassandra. She turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, hesitant and uncharacteristically subdued. She hadn't seen him since the hospital wing opening 3 months earlier, though she'd heard rumors about his professional situation. Rebecca had indeed left for Boston, accepting a director position at Massachusetts General Hospital. Ethan had chosen to remain behind, passing up the opportunity to join her at the prestigious institution. Ethan, she acknowledged, surprised by his presence. I didn't realize you were attending tonight. Dr. Winters invited me, he explained, remaining at a respectful distance. She thought I should see the completed project. She was right. An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken history. It's remarkable what you've accomplished here, he finally said, his gaze taking in the restored grandeur of the building. With all of it, really. Your work, your new firm, everything? Thank you, she replied simply. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I owe you an apology. Many, actually. He paused, seeming to struggle with words. Unusual for a man who had always known exactly what to say to advance his ambitions. I didn't see you, Cassandra. Not really. Not for years. She studied him carefully, noting the shadows under his eyes, the slightly rumpled appearance that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Rumors suggested he had been passed over for the hospital's chief of surgery position, partly due to concerns about his leadership style after several talented residents had requested transfers from his department. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked quietly. "Because I've been forced to re-evaluate everything." His gaze met hers directly for the first time. "Rebecca left last month. The Boston position was only ever for her, not us. She said I wasn't advancing quickly enough to meet her 5-year plan." Despite everything, Cassandra felt a flicker of compassion for the irony of his situation. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be," he said with surprising frankness. "It's a pattern I created, using people as stepping stones, then discarding them when I thought I'd outgrown their usefulness. I did it to you, and now it's been done to me." He glanced through the terrace doors to where Julian was speaking with the mayor, their conversation animated and respectful. "He sees you, your talent, your worth, doesn't he?" "Yes," Cassandra said simply. "But more importantly, I see myself now." Ethan nodded slowly. "I've been offered a position heading a cardiac care program in an underserved area upstate, less prestigious than what I once wanted, but perhaps more meaningful." "That sounds like important work," she offered. "It would be a fresh start," he agreed. "A chance to remember why I became a doctor in the first place." A gentle evening breeze stirred the air between them, carrying the scent of autumn leaves from the park below. Looking at Ethan now, Cassandra realized she felt no lingering anger, no desire for vindication. What she felt instead was something unexpected. Hope that he might find his way to a more authentic life, as she had found hers. "I should rejoin the guests," she said after a moment. "But I wish you well, Ethan. Genuinely." He seemed startled by her sincerity, then grateful. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As she turned to leave, he added quietly, "The children's wing renovation. Laura mentioned you might be involved. Your design for the healing gardens has made a real difference for my patients. I hope you'll consider the project." "I already have," she replied. Returning to the ballroom, Cassandra found Julian waiting near the grand staircase, his expression curious but not intrusive. "Everything all right?" "Yes," she said truthfully. "Just closing a chapter properly." Later, that evening, as the celebration continued around them, Julian led her to a quiet corner of the mezzanine. "I have something for you," he said, presenting her with a small, elegantly wrapped package. Inside was an antique brass key, its design echoing the Art Deco motifs of the Harrington building. "What's this for?" she asked, running her finger along its intricate pattern. "The Westfield Theater on Madison Avenue," Julian explained. "Built in 1925, abandoned in the 80s. The city council approved my bid to purchase and restore it last week." Cassandra's eyes widened. The Westfield was a neglected treasure she had often admired, its deteriorating facade still hinting at former glory. "Julian, that's wonderful. It's exactly the kind of project that could revitalize that entire district." "I thought so too," he smiled. "Which is why I'd like your firm to lead the restoration. If you're interested, of course." "If I'm interested?" She laughed. "The Westfield has been on my dream restoration list for years." "I know." Julian's eyes were warm. "You mentioned it during our first meeting at the Harrington, though you might not remember. You said it had the best original plasterwork in the city just waiting to be rediscovered." The realization that he had remembered such a detail from their first professional conversation, that he had been listening so intently to her passions from the very beginning, filled Cassandra with profound gratitude. "There's something else," Julian continued, his tone shifting slightly. "The Westfield project includes the adjacent building, perfect for the headquarters of your new healing architecture division, should you decide to pursue that vision. Cassandra looked at him in surprise. You've been giving this serious thought. Of course, he said simply. Your ideas matter to me. Your dreams matter. Around them, the Harrington building hummed with celebration, a structure reborn through vision and perseverance, stronger now than in its original form. Through the mezzanine windows, the city spread before them, a tapestry of stories and possibilities. We make a good team, don't we? She said softly. Julian's hand found hers, his touch gentle but sure. The best kind, equals bringing different strengths to a shared vision. As midnight approached, they stood together on the rooftop terrace, where they had first discussed the building's potential. The city lights sparkled below them like earthbound stars, and the autumn air carried the promise of new beginnings. When I started the Harrington restoration, Cassandra reflected, I was trying to rebuild myself as much as the building. I thought the greatest satisfaction would be proving my worth to those who dismissed me. And now? Julian asked. Now I understand that true redemption isn't about being recognized by others. It's about recognizing yourself. She turned to face him fully, the antique key still in her hand. It's about building something lasting and meaningful, whether anyone applauds or not. Julian's smile deepened. Though the applause doesn't hurt. No, she laughed softly. It doesn't hurt. Behind them, the Harrington stood complete. Its structure sound, its beauty restored, its purpose renewed. Before them stretched a horizon of possibilities that Cassandra could never have imagined during those dark days of dissolution and doubt. She had entered this building broken, seeking merely to survive. She was leaving it whole, ready to thrive. The journey had transformed not just her circumstances, but her understanding of her own value, a worth that had always been there, waiting to be rediscovered beneath the shadows of sacrifice. As she looked toward the future, the Westfield Theater, the Children's Wing, the Healing Architecture Division, Cassandra realized that the most beautiful restoration of all had been her own spirit, rebuilt not for revenge or recognition, but for the joy of creating something meaningful in the world. And that, she knew with certainty, was a foundation that would never crumble.